Tonight on Ground Crew Command Radio, we have how to handle the big cabal build-up to end of October climax and real-world examples of when you're connected to your I Am presence. We've got an amazing conversation coming up with our special guest tonight, Dennis Clegg PhD. But first, the headlines. And what to shine the transmutational light of your consciousness on this week. We have, once again, what's planned for late October, that most factions, including Trump, have been warning about. And will we need another mass energetic confrontation, aka a global mass meditation, to counter this? NK Ultra experiencer Jolene C. Barker says that this is a big Luciferian month. October 2nd to November 2nd, the cabal will try to take advantage of the dark rituals and conjuring as part of a big push for big physical attacks as well, not just non-physical attacks. And will we be ready for it? Will the 144K be ready in time? With mutually assured destruction between the Earthalites and the cabal, what can be done to break the stalemate? And does Trump's "the calm before the storm" comment that's been making the rounds straight after a meeting and dinner with all the Joint Chiefs, i.e. positive military, called by General Kelly, what does that really mean? You know, does that really mean mass threats for late October or November? We're going to get into that as well, look at the clues and draw fairly safe bets, fairly strong conclusions. Of course, Florentine Black Nobility Bloodline and P2 Freemason Lodge exposed as the controllers of the Chicago mob, who are the controllers of Vegas, who ultimately were behind the Vegas massacre. I guess I got last week's headline right. The cabal fires back from a window in the Bastille, as far as that's concerned. And positive factions eye Hollywood as exposure of the standard and normalized pedophilia, ritual sacrifice, and human trafficking is forced onto the New York Times as a starting point. So that's a good development in terms of exposure. And is the burning of evidence on the roof of the New York Fed building a confirmation that positive factions are indeed about to overrun such cabal institutions at any time? We'll get into that as well. And as tension rises, thanks to the fact that the cabal organization known as the United States of America Corporation has a $1 trillion shortfall to show for its payment deadlines, will the positive dragons, also generally referred to as the Chinese, bail them out once again until the time is right? All of this, plus a very riveting conversation with Dennis Clegg. He's had some amazing experience, and he's going to give us some powerful clues that you will be able to receive, accrete, and get those triggers and those internal triggers, unleashing more of your light and power and realizations as our amazing conversation that's coming up right after this break. All of this, plus more, folks, on Ground Crew Command Radio, your weekly dose of empowering clarity, inspiration, and motivation to get you through the Archon Invented Work Week. And all that's tonight. You're listening to The Unknown Light Warrior. Be right back after this very short break. And we're back. You're listening to
Ground Crew Command Radio. This is the Unknown Light Warrior, and I'm pretty excited to have Dennis Clegg on with us, because he's one of the best walking, talking examples of what it really looks like and what actually occurs when one is able to, at least with regards to their conditioned, programmed, wounded, egoic level self, to take that moment to step aside and allow the totality of one's being to come through them. All the high dimensional higher selves, the I am presence, and after that you got their connection with source and that kind of thing. And I noticed in my conversations with Dennis over the past few weeks, which thankfully, in the process of which we've now become good friends, I can proudly say, he just has, for whatever reason, which we may get down to the bottom of in this interview, best example of how he's able to just set his conditioned and programmed egoic level self aside. He just has the ability to just have no problems with doing that and do what he does in terms of actualizing, not just channeling, but actualizing into the physical realm and making changes on the physical plane. He's that innate, indescribably massive power that we all have, and he's been able to do that, here and there, off and on, when required, per his soul path and purpose, in a way that I suppose honors the broader picture of what's going on with regards to this increasingly faster planetary ascension back into 5D that we've been going through these past few years. And thankfully, we've been able to get Dennis in the physical. So he's here with me now in the physical, in the same room, because we've been able to travel to the same town that he lives in, which is good. So he's not on the other end of the line or on the other end of Skype. He's right here sitting in front of me. So Dennis, welcome to Ground Crew Command Radio. How are you?
Oh, very good. Thank you. After hearing that description, I feel like, wow, is my job done now?
We would like to think so, wouldn't we? Well, the ego does anyway.
Yeah. But it's really nice to hear where you come from and where your listeners might be coming from, and to get an idea of what the values are. I'm shy. I'm really shy about stepping out and sharing some of this.
True.
And it helps to know that I'm not going to be speaking in front of people that I need to be afraid of.
Yeah. And that's, that has an attribute to it. I've noticed that you're, more the introverted type, pretty simple, humble guy. And I think that works in your favor with regards to how and why you've been able to, when required, per your soul path and purpose, been able to just step aside and allow your true identity to come through and do some things that are quite interesting. And we'll get into that later. So without further ado, let's just start off at the beginning. Who did you know yourself to be growing up?
I'm not sure I still know who I am in some ways. And I love the adventure of continuing to find out. It seems like the most beautiful, productive, worthwhile thing I've done in life has been to step out of all the ideas of who I think I am. All of the descriptions that I was given when I was younger, all of the shoulds that I should be. It seems like the more I step out of all of these ideas about who I am, the more magical it gets. And it just becomes fascinating to watch it.
That's a great point. You've understood that from a very early age, which I think is, again, an intrinsic or fundamental reason why you have been able to channel more of your totality through your physical vessel. And I often say, the most common thing that I often say with people, especially doing energy work with them and for them, is we've become so estranged with who and what we really are. And upon understanding that, and you obviously understanding that from a very early age and effectively practicing that, it's allowed for more of your true identity to come through, because you're able to receive more if you understand. At least that's my perspective on this very good answer that you gave. And I know it's important not to fall into the trap of intellectualizing too much, and rightfully so, you nodded there, because that's a bit of a slippery slope as well, because what we're dealing with here is something way beyond, far beyond intellectualizing, understanding.
And yet it is very practical. I like to try to, I've worked with clients counseling, and of course I like to try to guide or encourage people along the same paths that I've taken that have been productive for me. And I've been around people who are going through, they understand the importance of breaking free of the identities, the conditioning programming that they've been given, which are boxes, little limiting envelopes of, in the moment, this is how I have to behave, this is how I have to be, according to what I'm told that I am. And these things are not true. And there's a point at which we let go of a lot of ideas about what we are, and then we hit an identity crisis and something and says, I got to find some new identities. I got to take on some new ones. And then the key is to say, no, you don't.
A new belief system, at least.
Yeah. But what I began to find was, in the moment, I would be free to do whatever the moment needed.
Yes.
And I would find myself doing things I didn't know that I knew how to do. I would find myself having a knowingness within inside I didn't know that I had. And I like to put it this way: if the more we're free of our identities, the more we can tap into the oneness, which has all possibilities, and we really are part of that oneness. In fact, I look at it this way: I can step into a place where I am oneness, all of it in totality, and have everything possible to choose from. And then I watch what I do. Like, wow. And then I step back into my little egoic self, whatever's left of it. And live back there again, for convenience and paying bills and whatever I do. But in those moments of stepping into being limitless, I also realize afterwards, when I think about it, it was all of those things I let go of that enabled me to do that, because I didn't have a script anymore that says this is how you have to be in this moment.
Yeah. And the letting go part, which allows you to transcend, I suppose, which seems to be one of kind of like a fundamental tool that allows you to connect and channel your, let's just call it I am presence. And the reason why I use the word I am presence is because one's I am presence is fundamentally omnipresent itself, as I've discovered. And of course, to the egoic mind, it's going to feel like oneness, but we have to be, in the positive sense, humble enough to realize, well, without certain, we really even know what oneness is actually like. And we have to be open-minded enough to, not, lay down these rigid conclusions that can be limiting as well if you're not careful. But I digress because, and I've almost lost my train of thought here, because where I was going is, that process that you seem to have learnt fairly easily in connecting with whatever it is that you need to connect to, whether it's your high dimensional selves, I am presence, or even past that, source and oneness, whatever it is, you've been able to do it at the right moments, and then you've been able to just transition back into the 3D matrix to go on about your mundane 3D matrix stuff, like we all have to.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what people have trouble is you got to ride it kind of like a tandem wave, have a balance, and know when and how to go into your greater totality, to channel and transmute into this world, or whatever it is one needs to do, and then how to go back into the 3D self, that plug into this matrix to be able to go on about, the unavoidable mundane things that we need to do, like, pay a bill or that kind of thing. And you just need to do that transition fairly well, as far as we can notice.
Well, I think that it comes from being a bit of a heretic, actually, because I was involved in a religion, and I began to learn that I had the healing gift. But the story that the religion taught was that it came from their priesthood, it came from those who were really doing all the right things in favor of God, and miracles were happening when I was doing healing, hands-on thing that they said was theirs, and I knew I wasn't worthy. I knew I wasn't in with God. I knew I wasn't doing those right things, but it was happening anyway. And that began to kind of put some cracks in my system there, belief in the whole thing. And I began to realize, really think about that. And then I had other examples of times where people would say, oh, you have to sit just this way with your spine just this way and do it for 20 or 30 years, and then the Kundalini energy will rise up through you. And I'm sitting in a Joe Dispenza workshop in Denver, Colorado, and I decided, I don't have the discipline for this 20, 30-year thing. I'm not going to sit straight. Forget it. I don't want it. And I'm sitting in a Joe Dispenza workshop, and he's busy trying to explain so we can go forward, and I'm sitting on the wood bench in the church, and I'm thinking, I'll follow his instruction a little bit here. And I shoot the Kundalini energy shoots up through me. Wow! And I did it again and again, and it became my toy for a while. It's like, wow, I didn't do I shortcutted. I didn't do the 20 or 30 years, sitting and being a yogi in meditation. But I began to notice that when moments would call upon me to do something that would be perhaps supernatural, that because I knew, it's like once you know that you can ride a bicycle, the next time you get on a bicycle, you might be a little shaky, but you can do it, and the next time you do it even better. And it seems like when I've been called upon, felt that I was definitely called upon to do something a bit supernatural, that I'm not sure when the first time was I stepped out of myself into that role. Perhaps it was the healing with the religion and watching the miraculous things happen, and oh my God, how did I do that? Well, you know what? I don't have to be perfect. I don't have to be accomplished. I don't have to have done all the right things. I don't have to have done all the right disciplines. And I realize that maybe I want the easy shortcut method with almost everything in life, and sometimes life says, no, you don't get that, Dennis. But, maybe we overcomplicate. We put too much baggage on these things, and we need to know that, we can be working on dealing with our egoic self and step into that brilliant, I am presence, when it's needed.
Yeah.
It just gets easier. And I just want to tell everybody, don't worry about being perfect. Don't worry about doing all the things. Find, if you haven't done it yet, or you're not sure you've done it, find those moments where you step outside of yourself into some kind of a brilliance and knowingness, and you don't even know for sure what it is, but it happens. And you're like, wow, did that really happen? Mm-hmm. And then do it again. It's more about letting go.
Yeah.
Because it seems to be our natural self to do that. It seems to be like,
exactly.
That's what we should be.
So when you mean just learning to step out of yourself, do you really mean learning to step out of your false self?
Yeah.
And into the true self?
Yes.
True, and I understand exactly. I think one 3D analogy that'll really help is, like you said before, having to be very linear and methodical with a certain energetic or spiritual practice to be able to get to this stage, to then be able to do that. And now I'm sure that has its place, at least at the beginning for many people. But really, what it's all about is showing people how to do something as natural as walking again. You never really have to train people to walk again.
Mm-hmm.
You just do it. As a toddler, you just start crawling, and then you grab onto a furniture and you start to stand up, and then no one trains kids to do that per se. They just instinctively do it. So it's more about that, just learning to walk again, and it's as natural as walking. That's what we're simply trying to get back to, from through our conditioning and damage and what have you. Okay, well, that's right. That's one important point I want to mention before is when it comes to spiritual practices, let's just call it New Age for now, for lack of a better term. It's easy to make another religion out of it. And we've all fallen into this trap to one degree or another, where, okay, you have to do this and then hold that focus and then sit, like you said, sit in this position and what have you. And, travel up to the teams and whatever, visualize, and it's easy for people to get stuck in that as well, and have trouble transcending that because there's always more, isn't there? There's always fundamentals, some basic fundamentals that seem pretty universal and seem fairly absolute. And what I've noticed is that, you get to a certain level of consciousness and mastery, I suppose, and you've got, we all think we've got it all fairly well figured out now. And then there's more, and I noticed you seem to to transcend a lot of, let's just call it spiritual norms, and just have no problems to opening up to there's always more part, and whether you're even aware or conscious of that, I don't know. You probably don't know either. You probably don't even care either. You know what I mean?
Well, it's just exciting. It's fun, to have new things happen. I hope that there is never a truth. I hope there is never a rival at knowing it all. I hope that the concept of God as being all-knowing and all that kind of stuff never, ever happens to me, because it's such a fun adventure, the whole... To have something new happen, that's so exciting.
Yeah. Well, that reminds me of I suppose a quote or a phrase that I remember Jim Self saying of masteryalchemy.com, who said, with this sort of thing, you got to have the openness and playfulness, that fun kind of attitude and curiosity of a child. That's the spirit of a child that's just open to everything and excited about that, and have no boundaries in playing full out, if you will, similar to the nature and characteristics of a child. And I've noticed that you're able to apply that, which is, let's just call it an attitude that enables a lot to flow in and through you.
Yeah,
what I mean?
It's kind of like it's never too late to have a happy childhood, by the way. But
well, there you go.
the way I look at it, university programs, trainings, modalities begin with somebody who is a rebel. They begin with somebody who lived outside of the norms, who was experimental, who let go and did crazy things, and then other people says, "Whoa, you're getting some terrific results," and they want to study and imitate them. And
that's when the, I suppose, rigid or more rigid mental paradigm, quasi-religion starts to happen.
Yeah. Do this, do that, this step, and then this step. I took an energy medicine school with Donna Eden. Donna Eden disliked her energy medicine school. Donna Eden was a loose cannon. You never knew what Donna Eden was going to do. She was just going to follow the energy guiding her in the moment. She was a wonderful inspiration to me. Mm-hmm. But her disciples, her followers, her husband, everybody else is writing a book and trying to create a college based upon her and her work. Mm-hmm. Were driving her nuts because they were packaging it all and then making it steps and making it rigid and do this and then do that. And it's like she never did that.
Yeah. So, again, it's so easy. Again, because of our matrix conditioning, the average person has been, pummeled with from day one. It's very hard for people to grasp and practice, actually live the concept of not coming from the linear left hemisphere, And again, it's more about experience and not trying to having the attitude of a child, the spirit of a child, which seems to be one of the main mechanisms that unlocks the abilities of, I would say, the right hemisphere of the brain, which is, more attuned and connected to the heart and the totality of who and what we are. And even there, by explaining that, rationalizing that, even there, I'm aware, I've got to be careful not to fall into the same trap. I suppose.
Keep in mind, there's a difference between being childlike and childish.
True.
And a sage and an old man can become childlike.
Good point.
But one of the things I think that is important is getting to the point where it's okay to fail, it's okay to die,
There you go, yes.
And then the fear of...
removing labels, yes.
Of being exploratory, the fear of, well, what's the worst that could happen to me if this doesn't work out too well? Well, I could get killed. All right, fine. And then going into it. Yeah. Or the worst that could happen is people are going to condemn me, people are going to judge me, they may throw me in jail. Well, am I okay with it? Yeah, well, it's not what I'd like, but okay. When I became a pilot, I found out that I had to reconcile with myself with, am I willing to die this way? And when I did, I said, well, yeah, I'm willing to die that way. Obviously, I've walked away from all my landings. And, there's a point at which letting go of all of this fear of whatever it is, the stories we tell us to be afraid of, and believe me, society gave us those stories because parents are afraid we're going to do something terrible, and this is going to happen to you if you don't, and we kind of keep going with that in society. And there's a point at which that really inhibits the child in us. And we have to be willing to say, well, that may be right, I'm going to take my risks. I'm going to step into the unknown and see what happens. And then when you do, the next person says, well, he was okay doing it. And it worked out for him. Maybe I can.
Again, that's another great example of transcending, once again, one of the ultimate fears that have been given to us, which is the fear of death, at an archetypal level. We're talking here. And through that, what you just described, how you handled that, you transcended the mother of all fears, which is fear of death, for the ego, at least. And as you've just explained, you've expanded your boundaries once again.
I began to wonder when I was working doing a lot of counseling and stuff when I was younger, why people were so resistant to change. And well, the only way I was ever going to find that answer was to say, why am I resistant to change? And it's because I'm afraid I'll cease to be. Well, it's a fear of death.
Death, yeah.
Even though I'll still be in this body, even though I'll continue living, I don't know who I'm going to be.
Yeah.
But if you can turn that around and say,
fear of death, yeah.
you know, I'm excited to see what I'm going to be. I'm excited to see what more of myself can evolve, what more talent I might find, what more excitement, life, whatever I can bring into my experience of living in this body by taking chances, by by moving beyond labels and ideas. People have told you what you have to be, you should be, what, to be right with society, the labels. It says, this is how you have to behave because this is what you are. Be that astrology or anything else that says, this is your description. This is, okay, thank you. You've told me what I can be, so this is what I will be now. Kind of thinking is, well, what if I could, move beyond astrology? What if I could make that not true for me anymore? Because it seems to be kind of uncannily true, but what if I could move beyond that? That's the way I think.
Well, I agree. I've always learned to teach people and remind people, use what you know, no matter how wonderful a thing you learn and apply, especially in the areas of healing, consciousness raising, reactivation and transmuting. But make sure you're never limited by it either. Okay? Right. Because then you've just put yourself in another box, albeit a very much bigger box. Always have that openness and awareness. There's always more. There you go. And again, you're a great walking, talking example of that. And you've demonstrated how much mindset, which is partly the one thing that you have in the right mindset, how mindset does have its place. It does have its place. Yes, it doesn't do things like self-fragment retrieval, in and of itself, but having that kind of mindset that you do so well in demonstrating and living by, it's opened you up to more of your natural innate abilities, which, as we've all been told, is limitless. Okay, great. Now let's do it. Let's be it. And you seem to, at least more than anyone I've met, succeeded at that, in actualizing that at the physical level, which is a different story. We've all heard the usual highfalutin things about how big and powerful we are, big, great beings of light, yada, yada. Well, all that's meaningless if you can't bring that down through your physical vessel and affect change on the physical plane of the kind that humanity always wanted.
I've come to the realization by experimenting, by playing. First of all, I want to say, you have to learn the basics, You have to become the bachelor before you become the master, so to speak. If you're going to fly an airplane and do it safely, there's a whole lot of things you got to learn. But once you got those things down, you can vary things. You can vary your trip a little bit, and learn what the show pilots do a little bit. Is your plane capable of it? But let's go beyond that. I had a thought.
Take it up.
Do that. Let's go back a bit. Where are we?
Well, it'll probably come back to you like mine did before. So if it does, just butt in. And,
right.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about the motorcycle accident, which made you realize that what you've been told about your quote-unquote worthiness to be a healer wasn't exactly true.
Well, there's a lot of things. Somehow I learned that I could be self-healing. And I remember when people said, you cannot heal yourself, you need other people. That's the way it is. You can't be on a planet all by yourself. We need each other. And when it comes to healing, you have to go to somebody else to be healed. Well, I began to find out that's not true. Not only is it not true, but I've had a bigger accident than a motorcycle tip over within the last 2 months. I don't know. And within an hour, I was off and running when I had a serious blow to my knee, swelling and looking pretty bad. And even the wound itself drying up and starting to scab within an hour. That's unheard of. And I've learned that, that yes, you can heal yourself. You can heal yourself very quickly. And for my own book, The Gods Must Be Us, I opened up this morning and I read a passage, and they were talking about, some of the, so we say, supernatural skills that they would need to deal with their situation, and that the speed at which these things could happen is entirely dependent on how fast they can get away from the mind, the small self. Mm-hmm. It was said better than that, and I go, wow, I wrote this a few years ago. I keep forgetting. But learning that the rules of how long an injury has to last, how it has to go, who has to be, is not really true. Mm-hmm. If that's what you believe, maybe you better do it that way. But I'm here to tell you that over and over again, I've been able to use my own energy to heal a wound, an accident. And at first I did it on other people. Well, that part made sense. I'm working on other people, but it wasn't supposed to happen to be able to do it on self. Mm-hmm. So recently, it was a pretty big accident, but the person who was with me had only a few days before told me how she believed in different medical approaches and says, I don't know about this energy thing. So she got to watch me just simply putting my hands a couple of inches around my knee, watch it go from being bruised and swollen and a lot of pain and not being able to walk on it and going into shock and all this kind of stuff, to within about an hour. We didn't time it. We didn't take before and after pictures because we didn't know what we were up against. I was hurt, but she got to see that. And the person who was with me has had chronic health problems for a long time. She wanted me to do healing work on her. Says, and a couple of weeks before I told her, I can't heal you. And I think she was a little bit shocked. But she really got the message. You heal yourself. And boy, has she ever changed her tune. But she was telling me how she didn't buy all this energy stuff, and then she watched it happening before her. And it's like, well, I don't want to prove this too many times because that really hurt. But it was. I don't know that it was about me. I think I needed to have that happen so that she could witness the power of energy and intention and healing.
And innate abilities, our natural abilities.
And she says, and the thing about you is you were cracking jokes and laughing about it the whole time. Well, laughter is a good medicine.
Well, that lightness that humor brings does allow for more flow, as well.
But when did I learn that was possible and relax about it? This is just no big deal, and just laugh and carry on and have, hands around, just flowing, giving the energy. But it's like, again, learning to walk, learning to ride the bicycle, learning to fly the airplane, you build on it, and then you have confidence. You don't need that first step anymore. It just happens. Yeah. And then you're operating at a higher level, so. Yeah. So I don't know, my higher level that day was I'm cracking jokes, but I automatically, first thing I did, I put my hands down there to give energy to my knee, and then the pain, it hurt like hell. It's like, okay, don't contain the pain, keep sending the pain out through the feet. Same thing I would tell a client, don't hold on to that pain, don't restrict, don't hold it, don't keep it, let it flow out of you.
Yeah.
And by, after you get some experience, you just do it. You don't worry about whether it's possible anymore. You did it before.
Yep.
But sometimes it just takes one person to say, this is possible. And I'm looking and going, well, wait a minute. If I can do this, so can anybody else.
Yeah.
How do I get across to other people? Don't look at me as special. Look at me as really ordinary, and then step into that ordinariness yourself.
Yeah.
Don't look up to me and for don't be making a special deal about who I am. I just got really normal.
Yep.
You know, if you're still thinking you're special for all these different reasons, like I used to, or like I do when I'm not in that healing space, you know, when I'm in my ego self, my little tiny self, you know, that's not normal. That's special.
No, it isn't. Yeah. When in truth, that's the natural, true normal, if you will. And I think this gives us strong clues as to why, you know, all those quote unquote miracles that Jesus Christ has been, you know, believed to have performed. I think, you know, we're dealing with a very similar thing, and where it's actually a natural ability to perform these so-called miracles. I mean, they're miracles only from the perspective and paradigm of the 3D matrix definition of normal, and what's possible and what's not possible. And we all know the famous quote by Jesus Christ, whereby he would say, you know, everything that I do, you can do, and even greater things still. We've all come across that at some point, you know. So even though I'm not certainly a religious person, I think that's quite applicable here.
Well, I was taught, I was in religion, and I was taught that it was all about satisfying requirements, doing more, you know, performing better in certain rules and commandments and stuff like this. That's what you had to do to get to that place. And but that statement, you know, that you just said, you know, like, oh, he said I could do more than this. But what I've learned through my experience at being a little brash and careless and experimental is I've come to believe that we do have instincts of the highest level, and that what we've got to do is get ourselves out of the way, you know, whittle away that junk, the rubbish, the conditioned ego.
Yeah, and all this baggage, you know.
And you don't have to be perfect in it, you know, forget perfection. You know, you just got to put some cracks in the system. You can keep working on it, but when you need to, you can step out and do miracles. I'm not so sure Jesus was perfect. I think he may have been better at stepping out and doing what he needed to do when the situation was there for him to do it.
Exactly. I think he understood that process of getting, well, the ego anyway, getting out of the way for the true identity and greater beingness, multidimensional aspects and so forth to come through.
And that's kind of the opposite of what we're conditioned and taught. You know, we have to achieve. We have to be, you know,
go out there and have this outward focus. Obviously.
And if it doesn't work, it's because you haven't satisfied the requirements enough. You haven't worked, you know, you haven't done enough.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, I'm here to tell you, if I had to wait for that, nothing I've ever done in the way of miracles would have happened.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. That's right. So, okay, well, let's get into, let's just call it one demonstration or another demonstration, okay, because, you know, we still have our left hemisphere linear scientific minds that still would like to see, hear, feel with our physical senses. So let's get into tell us about what happened with regards to the Japanese tsunami. It was the Fukushima disaster, right?
Yes, that's part of what happened with that one.
2011. So just spend 5 minutes telling us your conscious experience of that. You know, God knows what was happening in the non-physical, but yeah.
That was probably the first time that, you know, I knew by the way I got notified about it happening. I don't watch TV, and I happened to be in a room in Tennessee, and it happened that my girlfriend's sister lived in Hawaii. At 2:26 in the morning, she texts that a tsunami's headed for Hawaii. That wakes us up. We read the text. No phone conversation or anything. No explanation beyond that. And we turn on the news, and it's showing the pictures in the late afternoon of what's happening in Japan. And then the newscasters start interviewing scientists, and they're talking about whole islands are going to be washed over, about the devastation expected all over the Pacific. I'm thinking of the low-lying areas around San Diego that I love to visit. I'm thinking, oh, they may not be here anymore. And
much less Hawaii, I should imagine.
Yeah,
parts of it.
And everybody in Hawaii is evacuated to high ground with anticipation of what's going to happen. And I'm watching all of this, with a curious eye. And my girlfriend says, "Would you turn off the TV? I want to sleep." And I'm laying there, and I've done some, I played around with energy and the elements and stuff for years. And I'm laying on my stomach, which is something I don't do. And I had this sense of, like, the way the circumstances all happened, that I was being called to do something about it. And I'm thinking, and then I go into all of the argument about small me. This is for other people to do. This is for great people to do. This is for, God, for guides, for angels, for other people to step in and do, and arguing about why I shouldn't, but there's something in me that says I know what to do. And I couldn't explain it. I had no education, no reason to believe that there should be something in me that would know what to do. But it kept at me that I knew what to do. And I'm having this argument with myself about why I shouldn't. And I'm thinking, by now, if this thing's moving over 500 miles an hour, there may be some islands that have already been washed over, and how many people are getting killed, and how many more people are getting killed. And if I don't do what I think I know how to do, how am I going to feel if I just talk myself out of it and never try? And it didn't take very long. Suddenly, I went into what I did, and I'm like, well, okay, that's nice. And I curled up with my girlfriend and went to sleep. And I really couldn't put into words what it did. In fact, it took me several years to realize I need to reverse engineer something here, because I couldn't figure out how to tell anybody. But I knew that I knew. And then we get up in the morning, and about that time, I'm supposed to be arriving in Hawaii. And we tell her parents what's going on. And they turn on their TV, great big screen TV, and we're sitting in the room, and they're showing, cameras in Hawaii, and they have a 12-minute window of when they expect this wave to arrive. And so we're watching cameras. It's at night, and I'm thinking, wow, this is going to be exciting. I want to see all this happening. I've never seen such a thing happening. And it's like, there's this other side of me that's going, but what if what I did last night worked? How am I going to live with that? How am I going to explain that one? And of course, we know from history that it worked. And then I spend a whole lot of time trying to figure that out for years and get to the point, is it possible that one person with the right knowingness, the right consciousness, could do that? And I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to, for a long time. And I finally arrived at the point of understanding, yes. And then I thought, is it possible for me to teach others to step beyond? Because I've experienced that and some other things. I had to keep doing other things, but I had to be sure that I was called to do it. And consistently they'd happen, but there could be no proof that it was me that did it, except that I'm beginning to believe if every time I do it, I get this outcome that wouldn't be expected, maybe it's believable. And then it's like, well, okay, I get that. Now, how can I teach other people to do the same thing? Because I'm up in my 60s. And who knows how much life I've got left to live. And it would sure be nice to have some people be able to carry this on from now on.
Yeah.
And I think I know how to teach it. I've had one young man that I thought got it.
Yeah. And it's more like helping people remember or remind them that they already know how to do this, or at the very least they have this ability that's fundamentally natural and innate.
I believe it is.
Yeah.
I really do. I believe that.
So it's not a guru thing or whatever. It's just, I did it,
Yeah, I believe that all I've done is kind of like, I forget the name of the guy that broke the 4-minute mile in Ryan. years ago. Now so many runners break the 4-minute mile that it was thought to be humanly impossible to show that it could be done.
Yeah.
And for me, it's like, okay, I think this is really normal. I think this is our instinct. I think this is touching upon what we don't have to learn, that nobody has to teach us and probably can't be taught.
Mm-hmm.
I probably can't teach anybody, but I could probably guide them to finding it in themselves because it's already there.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is a difference. There's a lot of things that's already in us, and we are in denial of it. We think of ourselves as small. We're into this identity.
Yeah.
And we don't have to be perfect and become enlightened and suddenly be on the other side forever.
Yeah. And it doesn't necessarily always mean or require needing angelic help. I mean, again, we do work as a team, generally speaking, because it's a big picture thing that's going on, and non-physical beings are a part of it, and we often do work as a team. But in terms of unlocking that internal abilities, that's not always necessary either. Is it sometimes just seeing someone else doing it and then just knowing? It's when that knowing arrives or that remembering arrives, and people are able to truly receive that through their, egoic conditioned programs and belief systems, that sometimes that's enough, isn't it?
Well, I think that there are two things going on. I think, number one, energy is really eager to be in compliance with whatever we want, and therefore whatever we believe, whatever we want, we can create at least a holographic reality of it. And
Good
that's,
point.
which reinforces our beliefs in things that other people look at and say, well, that's nonsense.
Yeah.
But to the person who really believes it and gets that reinforcement, that the energy at least forms the appearance of it enough for people to feel like they're right.
Yeah.
The other thing is, I'm absolutely certain about unseen helpers. I don't give them special names. I just call them unseen helpers. None of them seem to get upset. They don't seem to have any ego about it. They don't seem to need to have a hierarchy or anything. They just fine. But as I understand it, in most instances, they're not in command. They don't even want us asking them to do it. They want us to own the responsibility and then tell them what we want. And it can be pretty quick, help me. But
clearly, because they see us, they really do see us for who and what we really are, a lot more than our conditioned, programmed, false egoic selves.
There's something about this game of being in a body, and they're not at the moment, where the name of the game is, our job is to honor, you have certain powers being in a body that you don't even know you have. And our job is to support that, not to take your power away from you and do it for you. And I think a lot of the times
that's the most disempowering thing,
we pray to something else to do it for us, and we get, we have really bad luck with that. When we realize who we are, when we realize that we have the godly abilities that we place elsewhere, somewhere in us, and it's not in our separation, it's more in the idea of our oneness, or many different names to try to describe it. There's some other state of being of which we're not so separate. Maybe not at all, and have infinite abilities and powers, or could just show up in the moment with what's needed, and it'll be something really mundane. It doesn't have to be a big thing.
Yep.
But it's. I think that we have no idea. I think that the gods of mythology may be less than what we really are.
That's another great way to put it. That's another great. Again, 3D, left hemisphere, linear, rational mind way of articulating this, because obviously verbal communication is not our natural form of communication, and, I guess that's a different matter, but very well put, Greg. Dennis, I beg your pardon. Well, that's what happens when you're steeped deep in such profound topics and really pushing, at least by matrix standards, egoic standards, really pushing the envelope in terms of, consciousness levels, and getting higher and higher and higher. As much as the rational egoic mind can keep up with and able to receive and accrete and apply. Because what this interview is also about is actually application. Again, not to put that in a box either, but we are entering times that are clearly getting more and more intense, albeit for the right reasons, because really it's all about deconstructing this matrix, this rigid, boxed in, very restrictive, fundamentally limiting matrix and mental paradigms and programs that are inherent within it, and deconstructing that, which is causing all sorts of upheavals and shifting of equilibriums of all kinds, clearly affecting politics, geopolitics, our institutions, things that have been hidden that are clearly getting exposed as part of this deconstruction process. The whole, what's her name? The Indian goddess Shiva, the destroyer, or something like that. That archetype, I suppose. So that's why it's so important that we, do our part in helping people return to this, return to what is fundamentally them, the true them, the true self. And let me move on, because that's just an important reminder of why we need to start to do this more and more to be able to negate, smooth, heal the roughness of this deconstruction period of the matrix.
Yeah, and I see really encouraging signs. Recently, a young woman stayed in my home. I've spent 67 years, everything I knew, the highest of my conscious awarenesses about things she could talk with me matter-of-factly about at age 30. And that is so exciting, because I have laboriously worked on myself an entire lifetime to get free of myself and be a little less crazy. And much to my surprise, things started healing in my body that I didn't have any intention of healing. I began to have abilities. Nobody taught me to have those abilities. I wasn't even sure about it. I just tried things and whoa.
Well, they were already there, Again,
it was
bypassing the programming of the mind.
Getting the stuff out of the way. What it's going to take to get it out of the way for one person and another, I don't know. I've spent my entire life, fortune, and many years working on it, and I hope that other people don't have to do that. Yeah. I'd like to think that possibly it's something that I could say from my experience might help other people to get it, and at least, go back and forth a bit.
Yeah.
I learned about the concept of enlightenment or some other things, and how it's like, a moment when there's a shift and change and the person's there forever. But, the Buddha also talked about Satori, I believe it was, where you have your visits and then go back, Well, that's pretty productive too. If you can find the cracks in the belief system, the cracks in the existing paradigm. I do a healing thing with people. It's several steps, and it works really well with chronic long-term stuff that hasn't responded to medical treatments. And the first thing I do is I may go hiking with them, and I want to talk with them, and I throw out ideas, and I want to create some cracks in their paradigm, their belief about healing and medicine.
Yeah.
And most people, well, I can see that. Yeah. That makes sense. And then I start talking about an inner healer. And what I'm really doing, I don't care whether they believe in an inner healer, whether it's true, whether it's just a paradigm, but almost everybody was like something inside of them says, wow, I'm being acknowledged.
Yeah.
And we start talking about the inner healer a bit, and then they go, they're sparkling up, and it's like, I think there really is something inside of them that's been dormant and feels like it's ignored and not understood, that is its own healer. And then I start guiding people into healing themselves, and I watch chronic long-term things disappear. Yeah, in the end, I sit and I give them some energy, and I say, but your inner healer or your inner wisdom is going to take this energy, and it might apply it to something we didn't even talk about.
Yeah.
Because I'm always like, don't look at me. Yeah, I can channel energy through, but it's you that decides to use that energy. It's you that's using me as a resource. It's your inner healer that's going to decide whether it's going to accept being healed or not. Yeah. And I think that a lot of what happens is we don't accept the healing because there's a reason that needs to be addressed and known and seen. When we see the reason that was created, corrected, then the inner healer says, okay, you got it. Let's be healed.
Yeah. And that block, as it's typically referred to as, it could be as simple as a belief.
Right.
It could be as simple as a past life imprint.
Right.
Or trauma of some sort that's still there, that, is still influencing this incarnation and all that kind of thing. Whatever the block may be, it's, at the end of the day, nothing more than a block. Clear it in whatever way, whatever the block is, so it can be actualized, and we'll have that ability. And that young lady that, and by the way, thanks for getting into that, because my next question was, tell us all about your work with people, helping them access their own inner healer.
It's been a fun experiment.
Well, again, it pays to just be open, light, playful, and that's where more of the higher self channeling comes through. And you answered it before I got a chance to ask it. Another great example, live on air, folks. So, and that young lady that you referred to, who I thankfully had the pleasure of meeting, she very nonchalantly and freely said, but I'm a very old soul. That's just as a matter of factly kind of way, whatever. And that, so she validated that part of her, deeper part of her. She had no issue with validating that, honoring that as quote unquote normal. Mm-hmm. It's truth, and that mental paradigm acceptance of that is what allows her to, transmit, bestow so much wisdom that she did for a so-called 30-year-old. She recognizes she's 30 years old in her current incarnation, but she always had no problem taking that higher level perspective and saying, well, and that come from her soul, come from her true identity. That's extremely old. That even, impressed you.
Yeah, and she had and this is so exciting. I really got to tell this story, if I may.
Sure.
She wanted to know where she was from, more, not where she was from on this planet, but her origin. And she says, do you know anybody who can do those sessions? I says, yeah, me. And we did a session. And I did several things, and I taught her some things along the way because she was so open and receptive, and I wanted to show her it might possibly know something she doesn't. But and then we did the session, which involved hypnosis, and I did it in a way I'd never done before, just allowing the guidance to go through, and then watched in awe and wonder as she went deep into. Should we say more of herself? And the old soul concept, she sent me a text message later to have her phone number. She said from the oldest soul, which was funny, but what she spoke was that she had been on many planets for a very long time. This is just another one. And the truth of it was, you really couldn't identify or care about where she was from because she's visited so many places and done the work in so many places. And with her wisdom, it was a sheer pleasure. There were so many things said, and I got a recording of it. And I was just sitting there and just like, I'm coaching this. This is really amazing. And I'm getting things out of it myself from her. And it was very believable to me that she was one of the old experienced souls that has gone around helping us, to grow in our consciousness from planet to planet, galaxy to galaxy, whatever. And she didn't need to know where she was from anymore. She just accepted the idea, wow, okay.
Yeah, she understood the gist of it, and that was enough.
Yeah.
In terms of what she's here to do or help with, I suppose. It's another wonderful story, or should I say, example.
Right.
Because one of my main focus of the whole Ground Crew Command radio show, not just this interview, is how to connect everything from the highest of all that is, at least that we're aware of, right, into this world. Okay,
right.
For people to, listen to this and have at least one big takeaway in terms of what they need to hear and listen to, based on where they're at with their evolutionary path, and apply it to their lives. If it's just one thing that pushes them, gives them that big quantum leap step back to, or a lot closer to, their true identity, where this stuff is as normal as walking, that's my goal for, the radio show in general, not just, but certainly this particular episode, or this interview, I suppose, because, it's needed. It's not just desired because you can solve problems, make life a lot better, but Gaia needs this, to help the deconstruction process go more orderly and more smoothly. It's like we want to take this, just imagine this world, this 3D matrix as a building. We want to just knock the bricks off one by one, starting from the top all the way down, and then build the 5D world, if you will. We want to do that, get everyone out safely, knock each brick out one by one, those big cinder block type things that big buildings have, and do it in an orderly, constructive way, in a safe way, instead of what's kind of happening now to a significant degree, which is have humanity still inside the building and taking those big chain balls, wrecking balls prematurely, which is more like what's going on now as far as deconstruction process is concerned. People are going to get hurt. And if we can, at least, we're doing our part here at Ground Crew and yourself through your website to not have the ladder continue for much longer at all, not at all. And again, that's, let's just call it a goal that I have, and what Gaia and humanity really means.
I remember being in India and learning about, I never remember between Shakti and Shiva which one's the destroyer and the builder, but they're one and the same.
Yeah,
they're one and the same. And then began to realize in life, because I was very threatened. No, we don't need to destroy. We don't need to break down. We don't, And I needed to learn. I needed to learn that, yes, I need to destroy the faults in me. Yes, before I do a building project, I have to dismantle something that's already there.
Yeah.
I have to, in some way, destroy, take away from, break down what is already there to build something more magnificent.
Yeah.
Whether it's me or whether it's a construction project at my home.
Yeah.
There's always the first step of taking away something that's been there.
Exactly. Like, proverbial old thing that we've seen throughout our lives. We've come across an old, crumbly, dingy old house that is, it gets demolished. There's a whole industry called demolitions, for a good reason.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to do that to build a new, brand spanking new, modern, nicely designed house in place of it. You can't. You got to do one before the other. It doesn't work any other way. And again, it's all about doing this in the easiest, most smoothest, practical way possible. And
yet there's
through this method,
there's something else that surprised me to learn in this process, and that is, you think, okay, if I'm going to tear down that old house and build a beautiful something in its place, I have to, know all the steps of building, putting this new one in place. But when it comes to us, there seems to be something different that's a principle, which surprised me, because I'm thinking, I've got education. I got lots of education. I got those pieces of paper to stick on the wall. But what I'm finding out about those things is it's not additive with us. Sure, additive. It's good to learn. It's good to expand who we are. That's part of it. But that isn't what builds us. It's what we remove. And in 1957, there was a very large Buddha in Thailand that needed to be moved for highway or something. I don't remember what it was for. True story. And monk came out, and it was a clay Buddha. The rest of them are golden. I've traveled around Thailand. I've seen the 21-foot long reclining Buddha, gold. I've seen many golden Buddhas. And I think, wow, this is worth a lot. But they were being invaded. Invaders were coming, and the monks, this was a very large golden Buddha. And the others they took and they dropped in the river. I've been around that river. I've watched those boats run up and down. I know what they're talking about. And this one they couldn't move it. So the monks covered it with clay.
Right.
This is a true story. And then the monks were all killed, and nobody knew that this clay Buddha was actually a golden Buddha for however long.
Wow.
I don't know that part of the story. Others do. You can look it up. And right before the Buddha was to be moved, a monk went out in the night with a flashlight, and he saw something flashing from the clay. And he went in and got the other monks, and they come out and they all chiseled I don't know why I got emotional on that one. They chiseled away the clay to find this beautiful golden Buddha. And I think that is the most brilliant metaphor for who we are. We just got to chisel away the crap that says we're not.
Yeah. No, that's a great.
At least that's what I'm finding. The more I've chiseled away the junk, and it originally
the false self,
so I'd be less crazy.
Yeah.
The more I've chiseled that away, the more things have started to shine. There's gold there. It's like, what?
Yeah.
But then that doesn't make me special. It's just like, this is normal.
This is the normal.
This is the normal.
Intrinsic normal of the true self.
This is the normal that we all are. I just happen to be a few steps ahead of a few people.
Yeah.
And they're somewhere ahead of me, and I learn from them.
Yeah. Well, let's push the boundaries just a little bit extra, shall we?
All right.
Okay. That's what we're about here at Ground Crew Command Radio, especially if you're going to liberate a planet. So tell us a bit about instant healing. Your either physical or, let's just say, visceral experiences of instant healing to the best of your ability in terms of verbally communicating that, because I've never, it's been a while since I've come across someone who's, I don't know, dare I say, in a natural sense, frustrated with verbal communication. He was, I've seen you, what was it? Yeah, just a few hours ago, sort of, I don't know, commiserating or complaining, whinging about, what happened to telepathy, goddammit.
Yeah.
I
want telepathy. I want people being telepathy with me. Oh, that's so beautiful. You can't lie.
Yeah. And that's, I'll use the word justifiable because, what was it, last year in an interview, Cobra did explain that verbal communication is quite literally a darkness invention, a darkness creation, as part of all the limitation kind of layers that have been manipulated and placed onto us from beginning in early Atlantis. So I hear you loud and clear as far as, telepathy is concerned. And Jim himself said back in, I suspect early Atlantis, the voice, tongue, lips, and so forth was only used in singing, And the old saying, I think it was a biblical saying, back in Atlantis, there was only one language, And that one language was telepathy.
Yeah.
Quite literally. So
Right.
you're,
So I'll do my best.
vindicated from an outside source. How's that? You feel better now?
There was a book I was introduced to somewhere about 10 years ago called Instant Healing. I forget who it is. It's on my bookshelf. A chiropractor, I think, in Florida.
No, that's
And it had some great principles in it. But the point being that instant healing can take place that fast. Outside of time as a construct, which is a handy way to make meetings, and be on, and meet people, and get to the airport when the plane's leaving. But it's a really handy thing. But first of all, if we can drop the whole idea of time, then what is instant healing? But to give an illustration, about a year and a half ago, there was a preemie that was born, a baby that was born premature, and I'd seen it on the internet, on Facebook, that a friend of mine who had cancer, and I helped out with that, gave me a call and says, Dennis, do you know about this baby? Would you do healing? It's in trouble. It doesn't look like it's going to make it. Okay. And I thought, well, okay. And really, the amount of time I took was no time at all. But I knew that something happened because I went and took a nap for an hour. I felt depleted, But if and she called me a couple of days later and says, did you do what I asked you? I said, well, yeah, but I felt kind of guilty because I didn't really put anything into it. It was just a quick thought. Yeah. And she says, well, let me tell you what happened. I'm like, okay, I like that. But, and I kind of chuckle because I don't know, sometimes it takes time. Even with myself, I had to put my hand around my knee for about an hour, or my hands, with the knee thing that I mentioned. But sometimes just the quick thought heals something, and later on, oh yeah, I guess that healed. Oh, I only gave it a quick thought.
As far as your linear conscious mind was concerned.
Right. Hey.
God knows what happened through your totality, outside of time,
But adults seem to accept healing a whole lot better if you spend time with them, and you let the energy flow for a while, and you do a ritual and a ceremony, and, you burn some incense. And at what point, I always worry about this, at what point will I have done enough where they'll believe it and they'll accept the healing? But the moment that they accept the healing and decide to be healed is going to be that fast.
Yeah.
The rest of it is just show, and yet at the same time, sometimes I put my hands on someone and the energy's flowing and I'm daydreaming, energy's still flowing, and I don't know why. It's taking a while. And then finally I check in and the energy says, okay, it's enough now. Again, I don't know why. It's like, maybe it's none of my business, to know what it takes for someone to accept the healing. They accept and finally make that moment of shift into being healed. But it's possible that it only takes a moment of shift of something to be healed or to heal.
Yeah, if the mind or the consciousness level of the egoic self, of the recipient, I suppose, is, ready enough to believe that such a thing is possible and accept it. Is that the crux of it?
Yeah, that preemie didn't need that. That newborn baby didn't need it.
Good point. Because the newborn baby hasn't had a chance to accrue beliefs yet.
I didn't even know what hospital that baby was in. I didn't know its name. I didn't know the parent's name. I had seen it on Facebook. I didn't go back. I could have found out. I could have gone back and looked.
Right.
It was on the feed, but it didn't. I knew that wasn't important.
Right. Yeah.
I was sitting in my house, and I knew that was possible. Why? Because I'd done it before. First time I did it, I needed validation afterwards. I needed did it work,
Yeah.
And it's like, after you get a few validations, you just do it, go on with whatever.
You get a bit faster at it to the point of instant healing, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah. We think we need a lot of steps or a lot of medicine, but what if there really is an inner healer that makes the decision? Okay, I'll accept this healing. I'll make the shift now. And cells, there's evidence that tumors can disappear, cells can make the shift so fast. The truth of the matter is that if you need an adrenaline rush because something happens that you need to run to safety, You get 1 trillion cells cooperating all at once, producing pharmaceutical grade stuff that they kick into the bloodstream in a split second. Isn't that healing? You know, our construct, our idea of time and what our bodies can do, or our souls, or whatever, it seems to be just about whatever we believe. So, you know,
and accept, ultimately, because believing is accepting as well. Accepting and it's possible, which is the enabler for it to actualize into the physical realm. Okay. Notice the key words there, actualizing into the physical realm.
Yeah.
Through believing and acceptance of what's possible.
For me, it seems more about believing, or quit believing what's against it. Quit believing what prevents it.
That's a good way to put it.
Quit believing in what says, I need to pay a higher price. I need to pay a higher price. This may not work. This isn't going to work. I have to do more. I have to do more.
Or I need to make a sacrifice here or there, or what have you.
Yeah.
Again, it's another strong thing that's alluding us to how Jesus Christ performed those quote-unquote miracles. You know, because he said it himself, right from the horse's mouth. You can do what I can do and even greater things. And I think we've come a long way, you know, as far as this conversation is concerned, of the how that, okay, understandably, the rational mind needs to know. Just enough for it, you know, to get the breadcrumbs needed for people to run with. And they'll be able to do the rest.
I want to point out that Jesus didn't say, you know, he didn't put any conditions except you. And And you is understood to mean everybody. He didn't say to be a Christian, to be a member of the church, to have done, you know, these sacraments, to have, you know, spent this many years in devotion. He just says, you.
Yeah.
I take that as meaning...
Or what you bought, for that matter. Yeah.
All of us. And I didn't see that there's any other conditions.
Yeah.
Maybe it's already in us. We just get the junk out of the way and it's done.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. So, folks, now you know why I wanted to have Dennis on the show. You know, because when I started hearing this, that, and the other nonchalantly being mentioned in passing in the middle of conversations that were much ado about nothing kind of things, you know, I thought, you know, I spotted that. I didn't let that just pass into the ether and then forget about it. I thought, I think I better bring this guy on because he can really help people return to their true identity ultimately. And above all, channel that, apply that into their lives, into this physical plane to, you know, help with this birthing labor pains of you know, and this deconstruction process that Gaia and humanity is struggling with into manifesting the event and then the actual energetic, literal ascension back into 5D. And that's really what this is all about. And thank you, Dennis, for coming on to help with rekindling, reminding, remembering, providing the triggers for people to run with, to take the ball and, you know, run themselves all the way to the finishing line or to the touchdown. Choose your metaphor or analogy, you know. So what's your website, Dennis, before I forget again? I forget every second episode.
Well, I did a book called The Gods Must Be Us, and there's a website called thegodsmustbeus.com, and there's not much on it. But my love is Love is the Healer website. And there's a lot of story behind that, how it came into being, but it's just simply loveisthehealer.com. And the book is available and told about, and there's a few writings. But I want to stop Demetrios because, you know, it's like you recognize these things because they're in you. If you recognize things said in passing, that I tossed out and go, oh my gosh, he said that, but he didn't really even play it up, like matter of fact, in passing, whatever. It lit up because that's in you. Because you're there too. You're average with me. You're normal with me,
Yeah.
And I hope there's millions of others.
Yeah, that's it. And, well, yes, it's about you listening to this, listening to our voices, I suppose doing our part in helping your egoic false self receive this, apply it, practice it, have fun with it, with that free-loving, open, limitless spirit of a child, an attitude of a child, whilst at the same time not being childish, being grounded, in this world, because it's our grounding into this world that enables Source, a goddess, to bring all this into this world, into these deeper densities, to transform the densities. So thank you once again, Dennis, for coming on. It was, it was fun. It was enjoyable. It was light, and that's what enabled the flow of, not just the intellectual, verbal aspects of things, but what's underneath our voices, voice codes, and all that kind of thing. The energy that will help trigger and relight that inner light in people listening to this. So, needless to say, folks, if you got enormous, let's just call it value out of this, spread this link, because this is the kind of thing that needs to get out there so that people can return back to their perfectly natural abilities that will one day be the new normal and is the norm as far as your higher self and I am presence is concerned, to help with this transition process. Okay, so we can be a lot better and smoother and even fun instead of this hard, rough, tight experience that we're all having, anxiety-riddled experience that majority of people in humanity are having. So we can be an orderly deconstruction rather than a destructive deconstruction, And that's what it's about, folks. So get this out there. And thank you once again, Dennis. And this is Ground Crew Command Radio. You've been listening to The Unknown Light Warrior and Dennis Clegg. We'll take a short break, folks, for the news portion and clarity that will be brought to bear here as far as the news, all the geopolitical chaos that's been going on and the loud noise there. So we'll be right back. And welcome back to Ground Crew Command Radio. You're with the Unknown Light Warrior. And I'm going to do my best to get to callers. I'm going to quickly give out the guest call-in number. It's 310-807-5232. That's 310-807. And we had about 2 or 3 callers on at the beginning of the show. They dropped off, but area code 651 has appeared there. So area code 651, I will do my best to get to you. Let's get through the news portion here, because there is
always power in clarity. First of all, many of you will know about October being the biggest month of the year for the Luciferian tradition, and so it's the time where they do a lot of their biggest rituals of the year, and obviously they're going to take advantage of that. They're going to use that to and synchronize that with physical attacks as well. So that's the kind of thing you can expect, but we are going to choose otherwise and focus on otherwise and practice otherwise in terms of mass meditations, if there's any called, to change all that, because we, as demonstrated by Dennis Clegg, we really do have that much power when the programmed egoic self really does step aside and your true identity comes through. As often, and it can be, as Dennis has explained, as simple as an intent, as simple as a certain focus or a certain quote-unquote imagining, and so forth. So definitely listen to that great conversation again. And of course, with regards to October, other factions have been warning, including Trump, about something big to happen in between now until I think 4th of November. But when the plasma topper bombs, the Chimera, Yaldabaoth, etc., is cleared, there's going to be the mother of all green lights. That's when you're going to see mass mobilization of law enforcement, DHS personnel, and the military start filling up the FEMA camps that were meant for us. Obviously, not all Luciferians are going to surrender peacefully. There may be the odd resistance manifested in the form of either them just suiciding or shooting back, the odd shooting incident here and there, which may or may not be presented on the news, including alternative media. So, okay, is Trump's storm comment straight after a meeting and dinner with all the Joint Chiefs, i.e. positive military, called by General Kelly, really mean the mass arrests for late October or November? Now, there may be a need for a big preemptive move if the cabal are indeed planning something big for late October, early November. So it is possible, but it may not mean the actual mass arrests themselves. It could be just bigger confrontations between the positive factions and the cabal than what we're used to seeing or hearing about. Okay, so it's probably, and mass energetic confrontations as well, which is where you come in. Okay, so, and that's what the 144K reactivation campaign is all about. And yes, we are trying to produce the promotional videos and get that going viral through, paid promotions online. So it'll be one of those two things, just really intense, bigger confrontations on the physical and non-physical plane, or the actual mass arrests themselves. One of the two. So, ready yourself as best you can. Use the 4 phases to help prepare yourself, clear yourself, heal yourself, reactivate yourself enough to really be at it. Or allow yourself to step aside and let your iron presence shine through. They can totally wipe anything clean, certainly on the non-physicals, conservatively speaking. And you can do that if your level of acceptance is ready enough. Now, will we need another mass energetic confrontation another mass energetic confrontation, through a global mass meditation? I would safely say yes to that. At a minimum, experienced energy workers or grid workers can and probably will do energy clearing sessions, remotely with their non-physical teams. The same thing, but be on the lookout for a call to arms, metaphorically speaking, about a possible global mass meditation towards late October. And I suspect maybe 31st of October. Now, MK Ultra experiencer John Lindsay Barker says this is a big Luciferian month. Okay, they will try to take advantage of the dark rituals and conjuring and so forth. And will the 144K be ready in time? Well, I'm going to call up whoever is on board with us and on our mailing list for me to direct a mass energetic session, aka mass meditation, if that's required. Okay, if that's required. And we're just going to utilize whatever we have. Little as a few hundred or 400 of us being focused, have the same singular focus on the same thing at the same time is just profound. And we'll probably use traditional methods of trying to notify other groups if things aren't ready enough, or the word about the 144,000 hasn't spread enough and the recruitment hasn't taken place at the physical plane. We'll use traditional methods that we've used in the past of notifying other large audience leaders to spread notification, which has been very hit and miss in the past, although we worked quite well with the solar eclipse meditation. But that's because most people live in the mainstream. We're all talking about the solar eclipse on the 21st of August, so that made it much easier. That helped us a lot. So, moving on. With mutually assured destruction between the Earth Alliance and the Cabal, what can be done to break the stalemate? Again, we are the wild card, okay, that's going to break that stalemate. The positive factions are already doing what they can, much less all off-world groups already doing what they can. And how well we can organize ourselves to do powerful energy sessions, aka global mass meditations, as well as unleashing more of our power and light too, through effective internal healing, clearing and reactivation, is going to be more and more the single biggest deciding factor of whether this stalemate's going to be broken. I mean, we all know eventually it will be, one way or another, but how soon can that happen? And we're the wild card. We're the deciding factor on this. I can nudge things either way, with the old metaphor of something sitting on the fence. And the Florentine Black Nobility bloodline and P2 Freemason Lodge exposed as controllers of the Chicago mob, who turned out to be the ones that controlled Vegas, who were ultimately behind the Vegas massacre. Now, it's really good to see the positive CIA faction has all this knowledge, knows about this, and is able to reveal it straight away almost. They've through this release of intel about who's really behind the Vegas massacre, they've gone all the way to the top and showed that they possess the ability to expose them fully. That's really good to see. That they know all this and know exactly what's going on, who's behind it, and exposing it. Really big deal. That in itself is a positive development. And as you may have heard, positive factions eye Hollywood as exposure of their standard and normalized pedophilia, ritual sacrifice, and human trafficking is forced onto the New York Times to publish and expose as a starting point. Again, it's really good to see the positive factions have the ability to force cabal-controlled corporate media to publish stories that they never would have in the past. Not even close, especially when it comes to Hollywood moguls with such power like film producer Harvey Weinstein. Another very good positive development. And, we can build on this. The positive factions can build on that. There's no going down or going back in terms of that development or capacity for that development. So, moving on to the New York Fed incident, fire on top of their roof, is the burning of evidence on the roof of the New York Fed building a confirmation the positive factions are about to overrun such cabal institutions at any time? Yes, more than likely. It's a strong indicator. They really expect the positive military will break their doors and arrest and seize property. If it wasn't that increasingly likely possibility in existence in the minds of the cabal, they wouldn't need to burn anything. No need to shred anything, which they've also done. A few months ago, a truck with shredding equipment, I think, was seen at the front of it. Now, as tension rises, thanks to the cabal organization known as the United States of America Corporation, only has a 1 trillion shortfall to show for its payment deadlines, will the positive dragons, often simply referred to as China, bail them out until the time is right? Let's just say, more than likely, the Chinese dragons have not only done this before and will most likely do it again, unless it really is time, or there's a certain amount of weeks for the things to collapse. But they're well connected to off-world groups and underground groups for that matter. So they have all the status updates on things like whether plasma toplet bombs, yellow bales, plasma anomaly, etc. are finally removed and Chimera finally neutralized. And I do have to say, it does have to be said, we're the single biggest deciding factor as to how soon all this will happen. Because for the most part, it's us, light workers, energy workers, SARSOs, what have you, that haven't quite reached our full potential. That's why we're still the big wild card, the deciding factor. And so, yet again, that's another reason for having Dennis Clegg on. He's I would say, I can safely say, living proof, a great walking, talking example of what happens when, the false current incarnational condition program self steps aside, stops thinking in many cases, bypasses entire belief system of programs and wounding and implants, and just allow us to shine the higher selves, all-dimensional higher selves and I am presence to just come through, channel through. There's an element of trust in that. There's an element of belief and acceptance of that. So certainly a good idea to, if you're listening to the downloaded recording of this show, to listen to it again. And it was a fun, enjoyable conversation. I'm sure you'll agree. So that's, it's us now. It really is up to us. Everything else with the Earth Alliance on the surface, and let alone the, our non-physical benevolent teams, beings and off-world groups, they're doing everything they can already. So, let's do it. Let's choose. Let's make that choice point here and now. You got perfect, innate, existing capacity to do that. here and now. You know, it's all about reconnecting, returning to your true identity. And commune verbally. I always say to people, get into the habit, the daily habit, while you're doing something mundane like washing the dishes or emptying the dishwasher, driving a car, brushing your teeth. Connect, put your consciousness on your higher self and the higher presence and start talking to them verbally. That works for you. And ask them for guidance, help with this, that, and the other. And of course, taking a look at the four-phase exponential healing clearing system really helps as an affordable resource to clear all of that which is not you, that stands between you and your true identity. A great starting point at the very least. And of course, that's what's going to be providing the 3D foundation and promotional support, online promotional support for the 144,000 reactivation campaign. So there you have it. Okay, the caller dropped off. And certainly review this conversation with Dennis. Check out his website at loveisthehealer.com and his other website. Let me see, thegodsmustbeus.com. Check it out. You know, it'll just helps the egoic mind make that shift and make the most of it. So, okay, that caller dropped off. Once again, the guest call-in number is 310-8007-5232. That's 310-807-5232. And I'll ramble on for a couple more minutes, just in case anyone wants to call. They can call in. Otherwise, that's it for tonight. It's been a really critical and big show for what you need to hear for where you're at right now, what you need to receive, often subconsciously through voice codes and that kind of thing, through energies, high frequency specific energies that come through the sentence and words that a person communicates, especially when that information is very high frequency information. And you know, after the conversation was done, you know, Dennis did write down on a piece of paper saying it's good that we said basically the same thing, just in different ways, with different words. That way, everyone is most likely going to catch or receive the message, the basic message of this episode, in the way that their egoic program minds can receive it. So, okay, we got area code 661, and let's bring you live. And thanks for calling, area code 661. You can just give us which state you're from or country you're from and your first name, and it doesn't have to be your real first name. Take it away. Welcome.
Hi, I'm from California, and this is Sonia.
Sonia, how are you?
I'm good.
Well, thank you for calling.
Pretty good. So the reason I wanted to call is if anyone's wondering about the 4-phase program, I just want to say that the 4-phase program.
Ah, right, yes. The phases, right. Phase 1, right?
Yeah, phase 1, 2, and 3.
Mm-hmm.
So
sure,
I just want to encourage people to consider it. Try the first one. It's with a discount. It's only $40. And for me, I've probably made more changes in the last month using it than I've made all my life. And I've been on a spiritual path for over 30 years.
Yeah.
So I've made more progress in the last month, I feel. Maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like I've made more progress in the last month than I've made in 30 years.
Well, that's a big deal. Give us, and that's great to hear, and inspirational for people to hear. What's one or two examples in terms of physical plane indicators, let's just say, or even confirmations, perhaps, that I suppose just wouldn't resolve or disappear for how many years, and all of a sudden it's either improved, gone a lot more milder, or the emotional charge is gone. That happens sometimes, or disappeared altogether. Do you have any of those?
Okay. Oh yeah.
Off the top of your head,
I was emotionally and sexually abused by my stepdad starting in my early teens, and that's troubled me a lot. And so that's not entirely resolved, but that is quite resolved. It's much better. I'm also what I would call a targeted individual, and some of the things that's been going on for the last about 3 years is episodes of extremely heavy sweating. And when I would talk about it, people would look at me like I was crazy, like that I would say I'm being bugged, and I know who I'm being bugged by, and the sweating isn't normal. And I would tell people that, and they would just assume that it was a medical problem or something. But I knew it was associated with being targeted. And since I started that, and the sweat would make my hair wet and roll down my face like I was in the rain. Wow. Excessive sweat. And would happen when I was, in a warm environment, in a cold environment. It wouldn't matter where. I could be hungry, I could be tired, I could be full, I could be satisfied. It would just happen. And I could feel the energetic mark of the person that it came from. And so since I've been using that, that's almost entirely dissipated, as well as the interference from the person who was causing it.
Wow.
And so for me, that's a really big deal, because along with the sweating, it caused really extreme fatigue. And so now that I don't have that, then that's, another layer that I'm not having to deal with.
Wow. Well,
the other thing that I want to say is I used to have fairly often periods of like electricity, like being run through my body. And this has probably been going on 2 years, I would say. And that happens very rarely. And now it usually only happens when I know I'm going to participate in a big meditation or something like that. So it's extremely minimized.
Wow, that's fantastic. And would it be fair to say that I suppose emotional pain or upset or just that real fear-charged irkness, if you will, being irked internally regarding, the effects of the sexual abuse from when you were in early teens, has a lot of the emotional charge sort of left of that as a result of using phase 1, 2? Or that's dissipated quite a bit. And the other thing I guess that I want to say is I'm a really sensitive person, sensitive to food, sensitive to energy, and I've never really felt at home here on Earth. I love the Earth, but I have a really challenging time with people, and especially, they might be talking about things that I'm thinking that doesn't really matter. Why don't we do something that helps the Earth instead of complain about this or that? And like I said, I really love Earth.
I love Gaia. And since I've been working with the teams in the meditation, I'm way less lonely, and I actually spend a lot of time talking to them, the teams.
Fantastic.
And my higher self. And so I'm less lonely, and I've also started feeling, it feels like maybe and again, I just wonder sometimes, but it feels like I'm starting to feel at home in my body, maybe for the first time ever, this lifetime.
That's a huge, critical, fundamental breakthrough. It really is, because then you can really channel your powers through your physical body. You have to be grounded there first, be at home in your body to channel, your multidimensional massiveness into this physical plane to affect the change that we all want to see. And well done, Sonia. Well done, and thank you for, just sharing your experiences with the, at least the first 3 phases. I have had other people say they didn't really feel much in phase 1, but phase 2, wow, I really felt something there. And, clearly the teams and your higher selves and I Am Presence have removed so much, cleared, transmuted, healed so much that was between your soul and your body, so you can be more in your body and so forth. And thank you for calling and providing this, showing your experience and giving your honest, appraisal, your honest experience about this. With let me see, 2 minutes left. What else was there anything else you want to, any parting words to the audience or anything else you want to share?
Yeah, we're really powerful. If we can meditate together when you send out emails, I'd be willing to do it, more often or something.
Yeah.
And all of us together, whoever's going to do it, and then more of us join, it will make a big difference.
Yeah.
And why
really
not? Why not trigger the event if we can help?
Yeah. It really is there for the taking, isn't it? You get a stronger sense of it's there for the taking. And
yes.
And that's very well put, Sonia. And thank you for calling in. Okay, it's wonderful to hear your voice, and we all appreciate it, and I hope to hear from you soon.
Yes, and thank you for all the work that you guys do. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. Thanks again. And so, folks, that's it for this week. Sonia, is a great example of, for the sake of being conservative, let's just say a great example of the potential of how far you can go, how far you can run with the 4-phase system that's on returntoyourtruth.com. And again, that's what we're going to be using to provide the 3D matrix promotional support for the outreach campaigns, online outreach campaigns, to rapidly recruit and organize 144,000 into one single unified notification list to make it happen. Okay, we're going to make this happen. So check it all out, and of course, spread this link, share this link, share either the blog post on returntoyourtruth.com/blog. Share this article there, or share it on Facebook, wherever you saw this and came across this radio show and this particular episode. We do need to get it out there because we are getting organized, and we will be making our mark much more than in the past. You can mark my words. That's what it's all about, because it's our duty, whether the ego likes it or not. So on that note, this is The Unknown Light Warrior. You've been listening to Ground Crew Command Radio. See you next week, folks. And you know what to do. Till next week. Bye for now.